you very much. I hope you can all see my screen. Yes, also thank you for the invitation to speak today, especially also special thanks to IJEF, who is keeping up the conversation of agrivoltaics quite on a regular basis. So I think this is also very much needed, as it's an emerging sector which is still not quite developed yet, holds a lot of promising potential. So yeah, to summarize some points of the previous speakers, which had very interesting presentations, which will have hopefully also some good discussion points after that. Thanks to Miguel, who was presenting the work on quality and assurance and quality framework on European level, which I think is very important also from an Indian perspective, as of course the European Union is not a federal state, but there are also different levels of policies that can be considered on a European level, especially also on a union and state level in India. And we also heard Vivek and Shravan about innovative technical systems to being experimented with and piloting in India, especially concepts of lightweight structures that reduce the cost of mounting structure, which is basically the biggest headache, so to say, if thinking about elevating and allowing agriculture below, as well as Shravan pinpointing the potential in urban vicinities, so that we can save the land close to urban centers, save it for agriculture, preserve the soil, but also produce the electricity directly there where it's actually needed the most in terms of like capacity. I will go through a little faster because some points have been touched already by some speakers. Integrated photovoltaics is the so to say the roof, where we are basically generally dealing with how to make dual use of space, whether that might be buildings or agriculture, vehicles, or any other application. Water bodies also with floating PV. So agrivoltaics or agri-solar in a wider sense is part of that. For Germany, we have, of course, a huge technical potential because half of the area of the country is agricultural. So the question when we consider potential estimations, it's not so much actually about the whole or the entirety of the agricultural land, but more about the economic potential. And there we can estimate in the medium and long run deployment of 5 to 20% of the conventional ground-mounted deployment. That, however, is still a future which has to be made. So this is of course always a speculative thing, but we definitely see a vast potential in terms of capacity that can be deployed. Attempt of classification. That's always an interesting thing, because how to classify something as diverse as agrivoltaics, which is basically think about two different ways: open field, closed field, greenhouses, and of course the different hybrids between greenhouse and open field systems. Then we can distinguish between tracked systems and fixed tilt systems. And of course, we can also make differentiation based on what kind of crop, like arable crops, stable food crops, or more speciality, more permanent, or horticulture crops. So this is a slide which I particularly want to put a focus on today, because this is something that has been negotiated and discussed in, especially in Germany, for quite some time. It's the so-called pre-norm Dienstspec, which means that it is not an obligatory or certification, or that it is not a legally binding certification. It's a pre-norm, meaning that it's voluntarily, but it's also a first step towards a more formalized or a more binding certification. So negotiations have taken place between many key stakeholders in Germany over the course of 1.5 years, based on the findings of an earlier pilot project done by Fraunhofer ISE in 2016 and 17. And based on this quite lengthy but also consensus-seeking conversation, this document has been drafted and agreed upon. And it's basically distinguishing between two major categories of system. In the first category, we have the overhead stilted systems, which are higher stilted than 2.1 meters, and the ground below is very much usable for agricultural activities during really, like, go throughout all the space there. There are indeed some specifications also for the amount of land that has to be effectively been usable for agriculture. Don't pinpoint me on the exact number. I think it's 85%. So 15% of the land is allowed to be used for the stilting columns, for example, or other PV system related infrastructure, but 85 should really be used effectively for agriculture. Then we have a second category. This category is for more or less interspace cropping systems. So we don't have much of a very high elevation. It's below 2.1 meters, and major agricultural activity is happening between the space. So we can see that, for example, with the east-west oriented vertical PV system, or with other PV systems that can be, for example, a tracked or a table can be adjusted there. In any case, for both of the categories, the agricultural usage must be the primary usage. So there is this notion that we don't perceive agriculture as an add-on on top of the PV system, but we more see the PV system as an add-on to the agriculture. This is important, as the cultural perception in Germany is in a way that we have to actually protect the agriculture, and we should mitigate the impact PV deployment has on the areas of reducing agricultural land by making a PV system that allows for agriculture and conserve the agricultural land. Of course, this is a certain point of view. There might also be other point of views. In India, for example, there are many examples of where agriculture is used as an add-on on existing conventional ground-mounted PV power plants. Also fair enough. But of course, yeah, there are different point of view, and it's the job of many of us and researchers also to figure out which application fits in which context best. So Miguel has already presented some guidelines from Solar Power Europe. Fraunhofer ISE also got some guidelines specifically in the German context, which I think a second edition is just in the making at the moment. So hopefully in 2 or 3 months, we have an updated version already. This one, the current one, is from last year, and it basically covers the most basic questions of agrivoltaics, but with insights that have been researched and validated for the last 4 years, including economic calculations. So the variety of systems, as you can imagine, may be from 10-15% higher costs up to even 30 or 40% higher costs, depending on what kind of system. If we consider only the PV side, the levelized cost of electricity there. But of course, there are many other economic impacts which can improve the levelized cost of electricity, and here we also don't have the agricultural revenues incorporated. So agrivoltaics is more expensive than ground-mounted PV, plain vanilla PV, so to say, but it has much potential to be more cost effective than rooftop. It is a viable application, hence. Here we have a picture of our old pilot in Germany. You see it's a very massive, voluminous thing with over 5 meters elevation height to accommodate big harvesting machines. As you also can see here in the picture, this is something that has been focused on in the past. By now, the research trends go towards more lightweight mounting structures and integration with permanent crops. As you can see here, for example, this is our up-to-date, our recent pilot in federal state of Rheinland-Pfalz, financed by the Ministry of Environment, Energy and Nutrition, also in collaboration with BayWa. And yeah, it's just been constructed. The apple trees have been planted, and we are very excited to see the first results the coming 3 years. As you can also see, the protection function is given by the modules. On the reference area, you have hail nets on shading nets, protection against precipitation, and this function is taken over by the modules. The modules themselves are also in different variations. Sometimes we have here some glass space in between, but there are also modules where the cells are actually spaced out. So we will also see what kind of impact that has on the growth of the plants. If we sum up innovations, we have dynamic agrivoltaics, as Miguel also mentioned already. In France, we have dual axis tracking. We have this orchard integrating PV, and of course the vertical vertical PV. However, vertical PV here has a lot of advantages in leveling up the production curve, since peaks of production is in the morning and in the evening when sun rises and sets. But experimentation with food crops specifically is still not yet done, it's underway, but results are not yet published. So mega trends in terms of research, of course, we have the tracking questions, especially in the European context. Of course, in other markets where tracking might be too expensive or not necessary due to high installation, might be different, but at least from a European perspective. The water management, as already mentioned by some speakers before, integration with horticulture, especially also because these crops have very high market value. Automation, what do we do with cleaning of the modules? How can we integrate automatic or electrified agricultural machines? Agronomical aspects, crop physiological, phenomenological crop data, and of course policy learning, since agrivoltaics integrates so many different sectors and stakeholder perspectives. Having integrated and advanced policy is very important. just one more thing I don't want to overdo my 10 minutes so much, but just one little thing here, save the date. In next year in June 2022, we have our third conference for agrivoltaics. It will be great to see you all there as well. It will be a online or hybrid event. Takes place in Italy, but online